All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ed Levitt. I'm the Director for Distance Learning here at Johnson County Community College. And this is part of our day with Desire to Learn, or I keep missing that up, Bright Space. And we have Jana Cameron here, who's the Senior Usability Specialist for D2L. And she's going to spend some time talking about some things that we probably need to know about, and we'll take care of some question and answers towards the end. So Jana, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, yeah. Thanks, Ed. It's great to sort of talk with all of you today. I have to say, each one of you is probably a centimeter high on my screen. And so if you have a question, my eyesight just isn't that good. I might not sort of catch your hand, but if you flag Ed down, hopefully I'll catch it. And really, I just hope for this to be interactive as we go, and so I'm happy to slow down, explain things in further detail. I've got a lot of content that I'm really excited to share with you today about our accessibility. I'm going to start with just some basic background on sort of how we maintain our accessibility and sort of how we do it within our dev group. Then I want to talk about some details that are going to be important for you to know if you're working with people with disabilities, or you are a person with disabilities. Just basics on how to get around, some things to watch for if you're supporting people. And then next I'm going to talk about ways of making sure that courses and materials built within our system are accessible. So a lot of stuff to cover within 45 minutes, and so here we go. So you can see me on the video, and so kind of what I look like. Another picture is up here. So this was one of the best days of my career. We are at the National Federation of the Blind's National Conference. So they have this every July, and every July they give a select number of companies, organizations, and individuals. So say 5. Their top award, which is the Jacob Bulletin Award. So this is for really making a difference for the lives of persons who are blind. And so they recognized us not last summer but the summer before for all that we've done within the Brightspace platform, which was just the most amazing recognition, because I've been here since 2006 working on our accessibility story. So you can hardly see me. I was feeling a little introverted that day, and so I'm hiding behind my colleague who is about 5 feet tall. So good on me. Good thing about working at D2L is that I get a lot of support, even from the very top echelon of our organization. John sees this as an organization-wide mandate, and that it's really critical to everything that we're doing. We want to be the industry leader. So it makes my job easier because I'm not doing a lot of selling, I'm just doing a lot of chasing down. So hooray. Now, I'm also fortunate because it's not just me. So when we got this award, a big group of us got together to take a picture with it, because it really was a group effort. Everyone's very excited about just sort of the potential of helping making learning more accessible to everyone. Now, how do we do this? So we take a really systematic approach to accessibility. We have a lot of design guidelines in place, and so we're baking in all the knowledge that we've gained over the years about how people with disabilities use assistive tech. We also proactively identify accessibility barriers, and so in that previous picture that I shared, there's actually a number of quality assurance people in there who actually have pretty good knowledge of how different assistive technologies like JAWS or Dragon Naturally Speaking work. And we're also considering the whole user experience. I mean, maybe you saw my job title, a usability specialist, and wondered, why am I talking about accessibility? And that's because we really see accessibility really as just an extension of usability, not in its criticality. Accessibility is about basic fundamental right to access, but that accessibility has to be a good user experience. You can't say that something is accessible just by checking off a couple technical checkboxes. So one of our philosophies is that it's really important to have a single adaptable interface. And so sometimes you have companies building one interface for most people and then having a sidelined accessible interface that you can go to if you can't do something. And so we think it's very important to have that single adaptable interface. Now, one example of this is when we introduced drag and drop in our system. So this is our course builder, and we made it so that yes, you can drag and drop in a traditional manner with a mouse, but say you're using an assistive technology such as using speech commands. Well, you can choose a menu item, and you can choose to cut and paste the same object within the same interface. And so we do this wherever possible. Now, to really maximize compatibility with assistive technologies, we've designed everything to comply to W3C WCAG 2. So this is an international standard, and most importantly to you, this is what Section 508 and the ADA are looking at as they're updating their standards. And Section 508 been making some major progress recently, so that's awesome. So you can see a lot of details online at, I didn't correct the URL, but it's brightspace.com/access. Now, above and beyond the standards compliance, we've also added some really awesome markup so that stuff that's not traditional web components. So traditionally the web has radio buttons and a couple form things. Really it was mostly brochure stuff. And then as a web developed and you have really interactive sites that feel like applications, not all of that was particularly accessible. The way area markup makes it so that these more interactive components are easy to use when, say you're just browsing using, listening, you're using a screen reader. So we've done a lot of work to add in this markup. And as I said, we do usability testing because, really, if it isn't usable, it's not accessible. So a couple examples, we've done this usability testing, with people with disabilities. We have a really long-standing interest group through Athen. I don't know if anybody in the room is involved in web accessibility or disability services, but we'd love to have you as part of this group. This is an open thing. But we meet on a monthly basis and we talk about different questions that maybe we have for you as the experts on the ground, talking with people with disabilities and your students. We also invite people with disabilities to join the group to offer their expert perspective. Do I have a question? Yes, please share with your service department. Also, we have our gold certifications through the National Federation of the Blind. So over in sort of leading up, the Bulletin Award is great. The annual certifications are them looking over our platform, testing the basic functions, and really making sure that it's a usable experience. They're not a particularly technical standard. It's more about making sure there's that great experience. And so we hold up our platform on a regular basis to them. And so they're currently actually looking at our platform. So I've been talking very quickly. Is there any questions that I can answer at this point?
I'll turn the microphone back on again. The only question I had was one of the things we talked about this morning. Can you hear me okay, Jana?
Yes.
Is the questions we were talking about on some of the usability or interface is fewer clicks. Sometimes we think about fewer clicks and the drag and drop and the different interface. What impact does that have on, the ADA community or the accessibility community?
Oh, that's a really neat question. fairly philosophically, if we talked about sort of the extreme of that case, everything would be one click away. And obviously that's overwhelming for anybody to use. And I find that when we have a usability problem or something is overwhelming, it's especially overwhelming when you're using assistive tech. So say you made everything one click away then when you're using a screen reader, you'd get a list of 100 links that you have to process through, and you may have to read one by one. So that starts getting really difficult. So it's having those logical paths and breaking it down and breaking the question down into logical steps. Because as long as you feel productive, it's okay to take 3 clicks. But you need to have those entry points that make a lot of sense to make things efficient. Similarly, if you're using a voice interface, it's going to be actually more cumbersome if there's too much on the page. You need to make it so that you have a very logical path to get things done and that things aren't overly cumbersome. Obviously, you don't want to repeat the same action again and again. You want to be able to do things in bulk where it makes sense. Does that make sense, Ed?
Yeah, sorry, I keep jumping back and forth. Yes, that does. I think, it is one of those cases of, on our campus here at Johnson County Community College, we actually have in the area, the Kansas School for the Deaf is right here locally. And then we also have the Kansas School for the Blind, which is probably within about 30 miles. So we do have 2 populations of students that attend here at Johnson County. One of the major things that we've been focusing on over the last few months is the video closed captioning, but I'm also very interested in other ways in which the whole design process is built to handle the different needs of different students.
Very neat. Well, definitely poke me where you want me to add more detail as we go along, but that's really good background information to know. All right, so I'm going to start getting into some real specifics for you, especially as you're supporting students from these 2 schools. So first of all, basic keyboard use. So this is really important for really any assistive technology. So any technology that somebody that is blind or has cerebral palsy or has dyslexia is going to use when using our system. It's important that first of all, everything that you can do in the system can be done with a keyboard, because really all these technologies to your computer are just keyboard emulators. So first of all, our HTML editor. So you may not realize, but our HTML editor is actually extremely accessible. When we went out and picked our editor, we picked something that was the most accessible thing available at the time. So every component of our editor can be used with a keyboard only. The only exception, actually, I shouldn't say everything except for our math editor, but we'll get there. Also, it's really important we have skip navigation in our system. This is something required by Section 508. So I know people actually still use this. It comes up in the WebAIM survey. WebAIM is a consultancy based in Utah, and they do a yearly survey of people with disabilities and about how they use their technology. And people are still using these skip to main content links. Another important thing to know is that we have a very strong focus indicator so you can quickly tell where you are on the pages. Now, a couple important keyboard tips for you to understand is, as I mentioned, the math editor is not keyboard accessible, so you cannot accomplish the tasks in the visual math editor using just a keyboard. However, you can use LaTeX for math authoring, and this interface is keyboard accessible. You can also paste in MathML. So if you use an outside editor, most of them export MathML, and you can bring that into the system. Another thing to be wary of, especially as you're looking at captioning options, is if you are using an embedded player. So If you're using a QuickTime player or Windows Media Player, just depending on what you're bringing in, be wary of the controls of that media player, because those might not be accessible to someone that is using a keyboard. Typically, there's a lot of problems with sort of these editors in Firefox, because they tend to be Flash-based in Firefox. You'll get trapped inside the sort of media player. So that's something to watch out for. Now, something that obviously we have a depth of experience in with our Jacob Bolton Award is screen readers. I also know that they seem rather exotic, so we get lots of questions about it. So one thing to know, all of our pages have good names, so people can quickly tell where they are. We've built in, other great features like headings. So if you're talking, with a student about, well, you just need to go into this place or that place in the system, if you start using some of the heading names on the pages, that'll really help them out, because they can find that in the markup, and you can actually navigate from heading to heading on the page because of the sort of built-in functionality. Screen readers are very command-based, and so you can find headings pretty quick and jump in between them. We even have a bunch of hidden headings on our pages, and so in your top navigation bar, you can actually name different sections on the bar. You may put all the tools that are available, across the college, across the top, and then ones that are specific to courses across the bottom, and these can actually have specific names to them. And so Dan could probably show you afterwards if you're interested in seeing that. Another thing that's important to know is that we have a lot of really unique link names, because as I mentioned before, screen readers, you just bring up all the links on the page, so they're named out of context. We actually had a student who was just getting started in our system, and they're saying, yeah, it really feels like this system's built for me, and I was expecting something really unique about all this work that we've done with the Way Area standards and stuff, but no, it was the links. The links made it really work for them. And so you can go and actually tell students to go to specific, or instructors or staff, whoever, to go to specific link names on the page, and that'll help whenever there's sort of a trip up. Another good thing is that we have good table markup. Shouldn't affect you on a daily basis. Also, all of our form fields have good labels, which does impact AT users. A couple tips. So first of all, that there's view options. So sometimes when people are getting started in our system, they'll say, "Oh, discussions is driving me nuts. I can't get around. I can't do whatever," and it's really one view of discussions can be challenging, or especially challenging when you're using a screen reader. I definitely recommend that if you're talking with somebody with a screen reader, get them to use grid view and turn off the preview. And that'll make a world of difference. I've had people just extremely grateful. It'll go from, anger to delight just by knowing that one thing. Another thing is that there's a bunch of settings that you're probably going to want to use. So I'll just actually skip here. So there's your normal account settings page, and this is really important to point students with disabilities, and especially students using screen readers too. So they want to use dialogues rather than or actually they want to use pop-ups rather than dialogues. This was really because of some not so great things on the internet. The internet so when you have something that looks like a nice application dialogue, you can't do anything till you do something in the dialogue on the internet. When we were testing that with people that use screen readers, we found that we couldn't actually block them from doing other things in the application. They just saw the whole page still, and so we had to find a workaround. And so this is a workaround that we hope to get rid of someday. The HTML editor, you can turn off that editor, because despite the fact that it is the most accessible editor out there, it can still be overwhelming. And so this was actually on recommendation of that interest group that I mentioned at the beginning. They said, just allow people to turn it off, give them a plain text box, because it's better to be able to type something in and maybe use Word and paste it in than get overwhelmed by options. Video settings, you're going to want to choose to optimize the presentation. And that's, again, one of those ugly settings because of sort of quirks with the way browsers work. So that's just some details on keyboard and screen readers. Can I get any questions that you have?
Any questions, anyone? Eventually, one of the things I went through the MOOC this fall that that Barry and the lady from Portland Community College did. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about was there were some templates that were being used. And I think actually you guys might be using them for some of your training. Do you know what I'm talking about? Accessibility, that have different heading types that work well for that?
Yes, definitely.
And you may be going to talk about that, but that was one question I had.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I have that sort of within it. I can jump to talking about it though. That's, I think something, maybe
Whenever
I'll okay. Okay, yep.
So I don't think there's any other questions. I'll let you keep on going.
Okay. All right. Well, we have just quickly breezing past some important stuff. Low vision, just that that the color scheme is good for people that have low vision. It sort of meets default contrast. So again, that goes back to our principle of really making that one size fits all, or that adaptable interface. So instead of forcing people with disabilities to use a different interface. Another thing that's important is that font sizes can adapt well. Now, let's get to the meat of the stuff that affects you on a daily basis for creating courses and content. So something that's really been guiding us is the W3C A-Tag 2 standard. So it's really about making it us being a tool that not only is accessible for people to use, but produces accessible content. And number one thing in there, thank you, Ed, is the content templates. So that came out of a project out of our accessibility interest group. We were sort of tackling the problem of how do we make sure that all the content in the system is accessible. And our conversation first started with a lot of defensive strategies. Well, we can scan all the content, make sure it's accessible, and then eventually we ended up with, well, how can we be proactive about it? How can we encourage it? And that's really at the heart of that A-Tag standard, is encouraging accessible authoring from the get-go. So our templates were something that we put together as a group to make it so that just sort of lower that barrier of making accessible content, but it to also be attractive. So you can bring in the templates in the content tool, and it can be used as a starting point for creating accessible HTML. Another thing to know about is this is actually upcoming. Captioning is featured really prominently, and we're going to be having SRT support. So you can watch for this coming. This will, I'm sure Ed will sort of give notice when it's coming to you. But we're really excited to have built this in. And so learning about SRT and learning about the caption, this is the same captioning type that's available in YouTube today, but learning about that will mean that you have the same type of captions that are going to work within our system. Accessible math. I know if anybody in the room is offering any equations or math, it's been a real struggle in the past to make it accessible. In the past, people have had to take a picture of an equation and then somehow in the alt text describe it in great detail, which is practically impossible. And so what we've done is incorporated a technology called MathJax, and then with MathJax, it actually does that harder thing of describing the equation for you. And so really all you have to do to have an accessible equation is use our math editor, and then it automatically creates sort of this described, machine understandable equation. Another small thing that you may notice and may have not known what it was in the past is our contrast checking. So the W3C standards for accessibility require a certain level of contrast between text and a background, and we check this automatically and let you know if your color is meeting that contrast. Another really important part of making it so that you can create accessible content in the system is knowing what features are available. So beyond listening to me today, we have a number of resources available. So in our resource center, there's a whole huge section on our accessibility features, features in our system which can be used to make your courses more accessible. And so I'd really encourage you to take a look there if you have your specific questions or you're just trying to remember something I said today. So finally, now a lot of the stuff that I talked about already is sort of the basic understanding of accessibility for any system. So any system that you create, you want people to be able to use it, and you want it to output accessible materials. But when it comes to learning, there's a whole other level of depth that you have to consider. It's how do you make it so you account for learner variability in the way that you're teaching. And so this has been a big focus for us lately, is how do we go beyond just that technical accessibility of things. So universal design for learning, it has 3 principles. So the first one is about, multiple means of representation. So making that output and those interface and everything accessible to all, so everybody can use it, everybody can understand it. But then it goes beyond that to making sure that people don't all have to be the same, that they can express themselves differently depending on their own individuality, and that we also engage people differently, that not everybody is interested in the same thing. So one way that we do this is by offering choice. So it's possible through our release conditions and our groups features to make it so that people can express themselves differently. They can do that poster presentation or an essay or an oral presentation, and that can all feed into the same grade item. So there's a lot of flexibility built into the system that you can leverage. Similarly, you can also engage people and encourage them to sustain effort by using our agents, our intelligent agents feature. So if you weren't aware of it already, I think this is one of the most exciting features of our system, because it really makes it practical for you to offer personalized feedback to students. So you put in their name, but you just put it in as a variable, so it'll actually fill in the student's name afterwards. You can program it so that it has a bit of a message to the student. So the quiz was low, go and see office hours, and then it'll send out depending on different criteria. So you can set up the criteria, and then this will automatically go out to all the students meeting it. So all of a sudden, sending personalized emails becomes a lot easier for you, because it can be a lot of effort to send stuff like this. Also, another important principle of universal design for learning is helping people self-regulate. So our notifications are a great feature to do this. Recently, I was at another college, and I found out that lots of people don't know about these, and they're super great. So I've heard from instructors saying, yeah, like, I put out my news item, but how do I know, that students are getting it? Like, I don't know if they're logging in. Well, you can go and really encourage your students to sign up for instant notifications for news, or instant notifications for grades. I don't know how often I talk to students and they say, I'm constantly logging in. I just want to see, if that, assignment that I submitted is back. Well, they can sign up and get that instant notification. And so this is a great tool for helping students, regulate their learning, keep track of their progress. Finally, for people with disability services, I know that so much of their days is spent sort of arranging for accommodations. And I'm sure anybody that's an instructor, you have to do quite a bit of this too. So giving people extra time, giving them an alternate date, an extension on things. And so all of this is available through our special access feature. And I'm guessing that a lot of you have used this before, but if you haven't, it's there, it's great. So that's what I wanted to show you today. Hopefully you weren't madly scribbling notes, because everything is available at brightspace.com/access. We've tried to be really transparent about things. So at this site, you'll find all the sort of help guides that we've created for people with disabilities, so that they can learn about the features that I mentioned today. So you can even link to that. It'd be great if you link to it from somewhere within the college. As well, we have detailed compliance statements, and so that you can plan with some of the things that we've know about our system and want to still improve. Because while we've done tons of stuff to make our system accessible, there are still things to be worked on, and we want you to be able to sort of go into your planning with full knowledge of where there may be gaps. We've been known as having one of the most transparent VPATs around, and I'm pretty proud of that. Anyways, that's what I had to show you today, but I'd be really interested in hearing your questions and feedback.
Okay, excellent. Okay, questions from the audience? Because I have questions, but I don't I don't want to take over stuff. All right, well, here's the content templates that we were talking about earlier. I went out to the site and I was having some problems downloading those. Is that something that I would probably, maybe Dan can show that to me if he has a chance, but are those then built into the system for all users across campus to take advantage of inside of the content environment?
Yeah, so the exciting thing I think about the templates is that you can actually put them in one of your central file areas within the system, so one of those shared file areas, and then all the courses could point to the same templates. And so then they'll just be populated in that drop list of templates that you have on a course-by-course basis. So say you start making an HTML file, these central templates can be listed.
Okay, because I might have had some difficulty getting those downloaded for some reason, but either I'll work with Dan or I'll contact the help desk at D2L.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried to get them and I couldn't get those. Dan and I are talking right now. We'll figure that one out. Vince?
Okay. Yeah. Here, Dan, you got to let me know in case there's any other problems. I want other people to fix it. So.
Vince has a question. Yep. Yeah, sure. Good question. Is there a possibility you could show us what is inside of those templates a little bit more in detail? Is that a possibility? I know you had a screen capture that showed that.
Yes.
Or maybe just go back a few slides and kind of point those out on the slides.
Yeah. My screen capture here. Screen capture doesn't capture too much. What the templates will help you have nice, like a style sheet for your content. So it'll have heading styles, have a style for notes. It'll allow you, we actually have a couple different templates. So say you have something that looks like a syllabus. We have another one that so it has a nice picture of an instructor, and so you can kind of cut and paste. So it's a starting point. It doesn't do anything particularly magical. It doesn't, caption videos for you or make sure that content's pedagogically sound or is more universally designed. It's a style thing.
Okay. Well, I know that over the years, as I've looked at courses, there's been some of them that I swear it's like PowerPoint. They've used every single tool they can, on all kinds of different fonts. I'm assuming there might even be different types of fonts that we might recommend in the template would use some of those font types. Is that correct?
Yep. So it has different font types, and all the fonts that it's picking. It makes sure that there's really good contrast between the foreground and background. It's got nice background styles to them too, so you can see little hints of imagery and stuff in them.
So like on the different heading types in HTML markup language, I'm assuming it also
Yes.
helps with the screen readers and stuff as they come through as well.
Yeah, because a big part of making the content or the content accessible in general is having a lot of the semantics behind it. So here it has nice looking headings, so then you'll use those semantic headings which screen readers rely on, or it uses proper list markup in the background, and so screen readers actually can handle lists pretty nicely. It has proper table formatting. Table formatting is a pretty big thing if you're using screen readers, because what you do when you're moving through the cells of a table is you can look up and say, oh yeah, what was that column header? Oh yeah, what was that row header? And if you don't have the right markup, you can get disoriented pretty quickly, whereas this way you have a quick way of sort of reorienting yourself when going through a table. And so this uses all that nice guts in the background, but also looks nice.
I'm also going to give you some kudos as we go through a lot of our classes on teaching. The color palette is very nice in that if you click on certain things, the little triangle will come up or the red will say this is not a good color, so that as faculty do want to have a little variety in there, they can know, well, this color is probably not the best color to use as part of that. So I really like what you've done with that. Go ahead,
Thank you.
Vince.
Yeah, thank you so much. We've been trying to do different things where you don't have to think proactively about accessibility, it's just there, right? So that was one of the first things we did in the system, which was more about thinking about the decisions as an instructor and how you're building your content. And then after that, we started adding in the templates, and then more recently, when it's out for the college, there's that captioning option, and that'll be really front and central for people. And so it's not dig in 3 screens and find out if there's captions. It's there, and you're forced to think about it.
I do have a question. I'm going to translate here a second. Vince, what was your question again?
Just to understand, the content templates are only for files, i.e. web pages. Is that true?
Yeah, the question is the content template is only for files, new files in the content environment. It's not meant for any other types of tools.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, it's just new files that you're creating. So one of the, I think, misconceptions about them is that you can take a template and you can write your content, and then you can reapply a template and it'll restyle it. But that's not the way that it works currently. It can be pretty devastating to lose your content that way, and so something to watch out for. So that's what we do today. I think that definitely extending the idea would be pretty awesome.
Did that answer the question, Vince? Okay. Yeah, we migrated from the Angel LMS system here about a year and a half ago. So, we tried to share with our faculty, now would be a very good time to, go back, revisit your content and redo that. So, and we're still doing that, trying to go through that process. Another couple observations is when you do the insert stuff button and you bring in images, I like the fact that you have the alt tag or alt capability there that's in front of the users, so at least they have the opportunity to try to type in something that might represent what that image is. So I like that feature, and we try to point that out as they're using that tool at times.
Yeah, it's funny. I heard that people sometimes don't understand what that is. Like, it's the first time seeing it. I know I've heard from a trainer, and they'll be like, oh, well, this is why this is important. This is why we throw this extra barrier for you putting up a picture, is because it's really important for you to consider, how is this going to be accessible?
So yeah, that's helped with conversations as we go through the design process, because you're right. Some people just, they don't understand why it's there in the first place.
Yeah.
Let's see, a couple of other things. You're not necessarily related to it, but I'm going to look over here to my colleagues from D2L. I like the ability for us to set up additional times on quizzes. I mean, I really like that, so that I just go in and I click on the student and I say, here, they get an extra, 30 minutes or an hour, whatever we need on that. I wish you also had in that same environment a different IP number, because right now when you do a quiz and I want to restrict it to a number or a range, that might represent only one student or one group of students in a testing center. I may have another student in another location that has a totally different IP number. And I haven't figured out a way to do that I can restrict that one exam to two different separate IP numbers. It's not an accessibility issue, but it kind of falls in that same area. Mm-hmm. So I'll share that with Dan and Shelley, that's something I wish you guys would, maybe expand a little bit more. And then finally, the last thing I have, and I'll open it back up again, is that our group here on campus looking at accessibility has been trying to get a big picture of the whole need for accessibility across campus. And I don't know if you have anybody that we could reach out to that would give us a bigger picture, Jana. We don't want somebody just to look at web pages. We would like somebody to come in and look at our different support services and say, okay, if you're doing, help desk types of things, if you are running a writing center, a math resource center, a science center, what types of things do we need to be thinking about to support that population that's out there? So it's not only just the LMS, but it's also the larger population. And the only reason I'm asking you is that you seem like you have a good feel of the bigger picture, and didn't know if you had any thoughts.
Oh man, that sounds like an awesome job. There's actually a number of groups in our consortium that have been looking at the same question. I know a couple schools out west are, asking those, big questions. So I'd suggest we have a mailing list for our group, and give you names of consultants that come up a lot on there, but it's worthwhile to actually mail out to that list in general. AFIN, the Access Technologists in Higher Education. I don't know how that turns into AFIN. I'm probably missing something. But they frequently have conversations about this topic. There's different schools that'll bring in someone in-house. I know other people, especially get a consultant. I know there's a couple people, like their president does a lot of consulting on that. And I mean, most of them, a lot of the people in accessibility seem to have a background in higher ed. So sort of flow and understand the circumstances really well.
Okay. Well, I participated in the MOOC that we did earlier. You guys all hosted in Portland. Portland really looks like they have a good handle on what's going on in the accessibility environment.
Yeah, Portland's really interesting because they started from sort of, okay, we have to figure this out. Let's break it down. And then they put someone specifically in charge of web accessibility. But it's been like a real focused ramp up for them to sort of think about things. And so it's definitely not, something that they had going for 20 years, but, they've, recently gone through the process and gained a lot of competency there.
Okay. Any other questions? I mean, the normal question that we have, and everybody is, as we have more and more videos that are appearing, out there, is the issue of closed captioning those, what tools that might be out there that you can get a quicker turnaround on. Some people say you should start from a script, which is one option, but not all of our faculty, they may just teach, like they would in a typical face-to-face classroom, and may not be working from a script. Is there any tools out there that you would really point us to?
Closed captioning, it's not my strongest expertise. I know that we have partnerships with ActiveSync, and so you can quickly, or you can automatically send videos that you created to automatic sync and get them back. And so we have something going along with them, as well as I think we have a partnership with Replay Media. Captioning is going to get a lot easier in our system with SRT support when that is something that you guys adopt. In terms of processes and stuff, I'd sort of bow out of giving specific advice on sort of what makes sense.
Sure. Well, it's one of those things that is getting better and better all the time. There's lots of tools that are out there, but didn't know if you had any, experience in a particular tool. Ed, you really have to take a look at this. But
yeah. Now, we did a webinar, oh gosh, it might have been a month ago, where a professor, I think she was from Wisconsin, talked about some of the stuff that they've done for captioning. So I can work with Shelley to get you the link to that, so you can sort of learn from their experiences.
Okay, well, excellent. Any other questions from the group here? Well, Jan, I've really enjoyed having you here today, here at Johnson County, and we're going to go ahead and probably wrap things up, and then Dan gets to be on stage here in just a few more minutes again. So thank you very much for joining us today, and I think I'll probably have to have you release the sharing of the screen back to us so we can go ahead and move on to the next one.
All right, great. Well, it was good talking with you, and I'm a little jealous of your nice day, and so all right.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
There should be like a screen share, and I think you can say stop screen sharing or something like that.
Yeah, it's Hayden. Decided to disappear on me.